Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
Recording.
You don't have to worry about that kind of shit. I do all kinds of post edits anyway. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the show. Recording here earlier in the morning, which explains the bright glare in the studio. And with me, I've got my good friend Richard SOULE from the NOX GIGAS project, who has been on the show in a long time. As a matter of fact, the last time I saw him was a few years ago when we were filming Inevitably Finding Bigfoot. And the Spaghetti Western Bigfoot documentary. So, yeah, it's been a while since I got to even talk to Rich or anything. But the reason we've got him on the show, well, we could have tons of reasons, but in this particular case is because it's the 10th anniversary of NOX GIGAS project, his research unit. And so I thought it'd be great to get him on, celebrate the 10th anniversary, and give everybody some up-to-dates about what he's been up to for the last decade.
Duke, it's great to be on. It has been too long since we've been able to have a conversation like this. Always look forward to being on World Bigfoot Radio.
Thanks,
Good times.
Yeah, it's been so long since now it's World Bigfoot Central.
Bigfoot Central, even better yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to be here. It is, for me, it's exciting that it's the 10-year anniversary. It was actually 10 years ago that you and I met also at the Montana Bigfoot Conference. And
Yep.
So that's exciting also. Yeah, I've over the last 10 years of research, I've compiled quite a bit of information, and we've done quite a few shows, actually. I don't know how many actually it was, but I think at least 7 or 8 of them, maybe more.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, there's a kind of a timeline for all of this research that I've been doing, and Duke's been following along with that. Prior to me starting this, the NOX GIGAS study, I was doing quite a bit of research, and I'd been on expeditions with the BFRO. Since that time, I started the website because there really, frankly, there was not a lot of the information that I was trying to share. I was able to convey through the blue form that used to be on the BFRO website, and just through having my reports sent when I would go on an expedition. There really wasn't a great outlet there. They weren't talking a whole lot about tree and stick structures. Back in 2012, I documented a huge, what I call a superstructure in northeastern Iowa. And, those things to me were significant. They were important to have that sort of documentation available for people. And there were researchers doing that, but there wasn't a lot of, I guess, as far as the big researchers, there wasn't a lot of buy-in from that. And so that was one of my first big things as I started doing that, documenting tree and stick structures. And of course, we did a video on that, or did a whole show on that. But the superstructure ones really were particularly important to me because I think they were getting overlooked. There were attention to the smaller ones, just the smaller tree and stick ones. But when you do several full trees together, I think there was a lot of that was getting overlooked, and I drew attention to that. And like I said, we did some shows, but really the first time I documented one was in 2012 at Yellow River State Forest, and it was a very large 2 trees that were each kind of pushed over one way, and one was hung up in a tree like this, and another one was woven in another tree. And some other researchers walked right by it. They didn't even notice it. And so when I saw it, I knew it was evident that was going to be that was a Bigfoot structure. That was a sign of their research. And I immediately, it appealed to me because I felt like the alpha male was most likely making a statement. This would have been something from the most dominant figure in that clan. And
this one, I believe I took this in like 2013. I know it was at Yellow River State Forest, and it was along the Mississippi River. The first frame, you can see my buddy Paul is there, and you can see these saplings are kind of woven and pulled through. And then there's one large tree that is stuck on top of it to hold it all together. And as we go back, essentially there was 2 big trees that were pushed over, one to the right and one to the left. And this is the farthest point of the one that was pushed to the left. And it has all of these kind of saplings woven in to hold it in place. So then, and you can see the size of it. They're very big compared to Paul. The next frame is the tree that was directly the end of it that we just saw in that picture. This is part of it as it projected towards that to the left there, and you can see the arching tree sapling kind of that's held in place there. And then on the ground you can see some supports. You see those branches there on the ground holding up and in support there of that other tree that's curved over. And so that's all kind of built there together to support everything. Interesting. So that was the one side, the left side of this superstructure. And then the next shot is where the origin of these 2 trees that were pushed over, and you get to see how big they really are. One's to the right, the other one's to the left. And then you see the one to the right, there's a tree kind of arched over. You can kind of see as it's going out of the frame. When you get to the very last frame, you can see how it's used as a support. And that whole tree is pushed over this trail, and then it's got a support of a sapling, and then it's pushed through the top of another tree way up high that is pushed over onto it to hold it in place to support it. And that is made by a very big alpha male, and it took I didn't have the room to stand back and try to shoot a picture of the whole totality, so I had to take 4 pictures to really show what it looks like. But it turns out to a series of 4 pictures, when you put them all together, it's really cool. And so that's a really neat set of pictures. But that was one of the first real big superstructures that I was like, oh man, people would walk right by it, and I was just like, hold on here. This is something else. This is bigger than what meets the eye. And so that's kind of where I came up with that term superstructure, because it's just huge. These are whole trees.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying. I run into that over here every so often too, and it's just like, it's really disconcerting to see a whole tree being used as a piece of building material and going, oh, what the hell can pick up a whole tree and move it? I'm afraid I know what the answer is, and my God, is this one big?
Yeah, you get the idea. These big alpha males are giants in all perspective. They're 10, 12 feet tall. They are huge, and they're rarely ever seen. An alpha male is rarely seen. You might see the juveniles, but you're not going to see the alpha males.
Unless he wants you to see them, in which case you're in trouble. So, on to the next picture here. We're back over in Nebraska again with this one?
Yeah, this is in Nebraska. This is in that riparian forest, wilderness park, and that's Rob. That picture was taken, I think, in 2014, and that's an arch with supports, and you can see the tree breaks there. Those are hardwood trees, deciduous forest. That arch is placed directly on top of another tree break, and you see that laying there by Rob as it's kind of on the ground, and then it has a nice tree break support that's holding that into an arch. And that's a big arch there, and that's a full tree, and that's a territorial marker.
We're talking superstructure on this one, and this is what we would class as superstructure.
Yeah, I would definitely call this a superstructure because you got full trees there, and they're using an entire tree to even hold it down, and it's even positioned on top of a part of a tree that it just broke apart. So the big guy was doing a lot of handiwork here, and these trees, once they put them in these positions, this one I believe was 5 or 6 years old. It's been this way for many years. It was there many years before I found it, and it's still there today. And it's these trees, once they're put in these positions, a hardwood tree will just take that form and stay there. It won't even need something to hold it after a period of time. They'll just stay in that. It'll stay in that arched form, but it still has the supports and everything. I was just there last spring, and it was still there. So another good example.
Next time you're there, walk around it with a video camera.
I do have some video. I had that posted. There's a link on my website, and I could send you that too. But there is a link on my website of video that I have of that.
I'd love to see a walk around of something like that. That's something people need to, when you find these really gigantic structures, the superstructures or megastructures, whatever you want to call them, get a video camera and walk around and document it, because they're so huge you can't get it in one picture anyway. And that gives people a really good idea on how big it is.
Yeah, and I do have some good footage of this video camera, and I go into detail to explain how it was made and how old and what the supports are. So, yep, I got that on my website. And then the next picture, we're back in Patty Canyon.
With the same guy, mysteriously.
So that was important to get that. Like I said, we did shows on that, and I had a lot of it on at that time I had a Google Plus page where I had a lot of the pictures that I had about 28,000 views or something on different pictures that I had posted there. Well, I started the NOX GIGAS study then in 2015 because Google Plus was going to be going away, and I wanted a repository to keep that and still share it on YouTube and other areas. But
excuse me.
When you and I met in 2015, I did bring a lot of those pictures that I had taken, and then even around Missoula there, I had documented during the week that I was there a considerable amount of tree and stick structures. And one of the interesting things happened while I was there. Another story that I can relate to is every area that I've been in throughout the country, whether it was New Mexico or in western Nebraska on an expedition, or even northeastern Iowa, there was always some animal sound that they were mimicking. And so that was something that I picked up early on too. And that was really shared to me by other researchers and the Native American researchers. I believe there was some Apache researchers in New Mexico that had talked to me about that. But the sound that they were making in that area was a crow noise. And here in Nebraska, we hear a lot of owl sounds. Up in Montana. Now, I don't know if you had noticed this, Duke, but when I was there was quite a few dogs that were barking that would be out walking up into that Patty Canyon. And the day that I was hiking up in there was one following us. It was trailing us, flanking us to the left. And it was paying so close attention to us, it was literally stumbling and tripping. But I kept hearing some dog barking songs like farther up the way, and it made me think that possibly is something they could be using there, but maybe something different. But I thought it was interesting that there seemed to be some signaling going on while this one was trailing me, and then there were some dog barks up the way, but there certainly could have been people walking their dog that day.
I should point out that as we were going up the hill in Patty Canyon in the situation he just mentioned, when we got to the top of the hill, we split up. And I said, hey, I'm going to go over here and look for tracks. There's a seep over that way. You go check it out and see if you can find anything. So within minutes, I hear Rich yelling, hey, dude, come here, come here. I go walking over to the seep. Sure enough, he's found like a huge 18 or 19-inch track right there. And neither one of us have a tape measure, so he asked me to kneel down and put my hand next to it for scale. And if you want to see that picture, it's in the outro of my show every episode.
Yeah, so that we had just a great time there in 2015, and so that's really, there was so much going on.
Plenty of activity. And I should also bring up that Rich actually sort of got bumped off being one of the presenters at the conference because of me, because they got me at the last minute. So he did like an exposition with all the cool pictures and everything. He had like huge framed versions of some of these tree structure pictures and stuff, and they were like amazing. And then I found out that he had actually already done a book on tree structures. Oh wait, not one, two books on tree structures before I even met him. And I went, well, this is the tree structure guy. So the first time I had him on my show, we did the tree structure mystery. And I was just a Bush League broadcaster at that point and wasn't used to somebody that would send me 84 pictures, had them all numbered, and then went through them in order on the show. So that was a big editing chore for me, but it turned out to be really good. If you guys haven't seen a tree structure mystery, it's still up on my channel. Go check it out. That was the first time Rich was on the show. And after that, we covered everything, including the Black Death, Zono over the province of Georgia, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, everything just in my research seemed to build on things that I was doing. And so really it was one of the, I did a lot of research. I was into New Mexico and Iowa. I was up in Colorado and then up in Montana. And so initially and learning about Bigfoot in these various regions. And what I took away from that originally was that their tree structures were very similar. Matter of fact, they were the same tree structures that I was seeing along the riparian forests here in Alaska, Erie River, and the Mississippi of Iowa. And so those were very evident to me. And one of the other things that was early on, I was aware on my first expedition about natural springs, that they would be using that to digest meat, that they would need to be near a lot of water, and the fresh water is the spring water. And I kind of expanded that, my first understanding of it, into just the actual ecosystem, which is a karst system that these springs can be formed from. And that was something that I had initially pointed out. And even when I spoke to Dr. Meldrum years later, he really thought that was a very interesting observation. Really, he asked me a few questions about that and thought that was very valid. Since then, really, for me, I can go anywhere, and I'm not just doing this to brag, but I could go anywhere and find them by knowing some of these basic things. They're tree structures, and that we're in a karst system, or we're near a spring that I'm looking for. If you give me a map that has topography and that sort of thing, I could absolutely get you in an area where I believe they would be at, and I'm probably like 90% accurate. I might even be underestimating that.
On an expedition at the Yellow River State Forest in Iowa, it wasn't in a cave, but it was on a outcropping of a large ridge line that overlooked a river, and a couple of the investigators had found this area, and they had a bunch of scat that was laying all around this outcropping below it. And so they went up to take a look and see what it was all about. And it was just kind of a ledge. But in the wall, in the porous wall of this outcropping, were a bunch of tiny holes. And in these holes, there was acorns, there was crayfish, there was like these little storage places. So literally, if you poke a hole into this Dakota sandstone and store stuff in there, you've got little deposits of food. And I thought that was fascinating. So if they're doing that on this ledge on a ridge line, they certainly could do it underground. That
was not only would it store it, it would dry it too. Because if you think about sandstone, at the point where sandstone gets wet, it falls apart. Sandstone is dry. So if you cram anything with any dampness into a hole in sandstone, the sandstone's going to suck the moisture out of it.
Yeah. So that should preserve it and keep it for as long as you need it in there. And I thought that was fascinating. So yeah, I think there's good reason to believe they're doing that in these caves, and that might actually make sense that they're doing that, and they are able to stay there secluded as long as they choose to. And if the weather breaks and they can get out without making too much notice where they're at, then you see, obviously we see them out during the winter, have any sighting activity. but certainly they could lay low for as long as they want during a storm too. You know?
Yeah.
They have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think when there's a cold snap, when it's like 20 below for a couple weeks or something, or when there's a big blizzard for 3 or 4 days, they can just avoid the whole damn mess and go underground, not have to even deal with it.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. And these are conducive systems to that, especially if you have running water year round through those karst systems. You don't need to leave the cave. You got a little stream running through there. These karst systems have wet and dry caves. And so just the one that you were talking about, the prime example of you had water coming out from under the ground and then going back in. So it was running somewhere. And that's a great example of how they wouldn't even need to leave the cave if they got this running water coming right out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Or if the cave was created by running water that's still running, at that point.
And that's typically how these are made. They're made by flood. You have a flood, they wash out some of the sandstone, and over years you just keep having these seasonal floods that come in, and then when the water recedes, it's creating a cavern. And so you might still have some of this remnant stream running through there, but the cavern just keeps getting bigger and bigger from over the years of water. It moves tremendously silted dirt. So you could literally, these caverns are created that way, and some of these things run for miles in this area. So they could literally be accessing these caverns for long periods of without even coming above ground. I have no doubt they can do that. There's some examples through Native American up in the Omaha res. I was told stories of caves up in that area that literally were big enough to ride your horse through, and that large groups of people would hide with their horses in these caves. So, I mean, that's ample room for any large predator to stay in. Yep. And the thing is, a lot of these caves are closed off now, so you can't get into them. They've been known about them, they know they existed, but then, you don't even know where the entrance are of these caves anymore. So it's interesting. There's a lot of connection that, once they go underground, they just, that's off the radar and they disappear.
Yeah, and also these, just as an example here, not talking about the karst systems, but just about other things, because there's been humans mining on this continent for a long, long time, way back before the white man ever showed up. There was people digging mines on this continent, and we've got over 2,000 known abandoned mines just in western Montana. So imagine all of the other mines that humans dug at some point for one reason or another that are abandoned and not known at this point. And like we were talking about the karst systems a little bit earlier, the ones that we've got on the map are just the ones that we know about. There could be a tremendous amount more of this stuff that we just aren't even aware of yet, or huge cave systems we haven't found, or, look at like Mammoth Caves and some of that down in Kentucky. They haven't even finished mapping those. They've been mapping them for years, and they still haven't got it all mapped out. These things are gigantic.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I do have a map that you will have posted here on the show of the U.S. karst map, and that's a good indicator of where cave systems can exist. But I agree, it's not the only place they do exist, because they do exist in areas that aren't on this map. So it's a good indicator of, the potential for these habitats where they're at, and that they have karst cave systems there. But we just basically scratched the surface when it comes to finding caves. They're in areas that we simply would not even have been able to map yet. So I think that's a good point. And obviously that's where the Bigfoot, that's where they're hanging in areas that we're going to. So
right, and ultimately what we're talking about here isn't just a geological survey. We're talking about this whole thing in relation to Bigfoot. So keeping in mind that Bigfoot is an opportunist. It doesn't necessarily have to be a natural cave in order for him to take advantage of it. Now, when you've got plenty of evidence that abandoned buildings and barns and whatnot, they'll take up residence there. If there's no humans around there using it, hey, it's theirs as far as they're concerned. So it just makes sense that if there's some big, played out mine or something that we've abandoned, that they're going to take a look at it and go, hey, this is a nice house. I can take this over. There's nobody here.
And there are a lot of examples of river systems having underground caves that connect to them with water,
Yep.
the water flowing into that. And so what a great way for a Bigfoot that we know they're excellent swimmers. They have a hooded nose so they can swim. We have more than enough sightings that seen them swim in rivers and lakes and oceans. And so they're out, they can swim. And what better way to access and have a secret access place than to have an underground cave system connected to like the Missouri River?
Yeah.
And you can get in and out of that cave system. You swim in and out of it. No human is coming in there.
No way.
That's just
You know,
not
actually, I don't know if you've heard this, but there is a story that relates to that. And I was just trying to think here while you were talking if it was Bigfoot Outlaws or where I heard it exactly, but it's somewhere down in the south, and someone had, there was a long-standing tradition that there were caves underneath one side of this river, and, you know, don't go over in that area. The area was kind of shunned. There's something dangerous that lives over there and whatnot. And, of course, the local kids, that's, you know, let's go swim there. Let's go check and see if there's a cave system over there. And lo and behold, there was an underwater access to an underground cave system that was on that side of the bank. And apparently they found there was horrible stink and evidence something had been going in and out of there. And they sort of assumed that, yeah, the monster that they were talking about does actually live in this cave, and let's get out of here sort of thing. So there's stories that actually back this up. And also at the beginning of the show, the thumbnail that I'm going to use for this show is a picture from the late 1800s that a gentleman who was doing research on trying to do photography research, basically. This is in the olden days, like if you picture an old West movie or something where they're showing the photographer on Main Street taking the pictures of the victims of the gunfighters or something. They got the tripod camera, and they have to pull up the thingy and expose the film and hold it for a little while and then close it off again, and, you know, the old-fashioned thing. Well, he was curious to see if you were in a completely lightless environment, like an underground where there was no background light, if he exposed the film for long enough, if it would actually work. And he was experimenting with different kinds of film. And he had found one that seemed to actually work. So he was trying this out, and he went way back into the Grand Caves or Grand Caverns in Kentucky, and set up the camera and was going to do a long exposure there and see if he could get a good picture of this one cave. And he was back there by himself, and he heard noise coming from deeper in the cavern system. And it sounded like something big, and it sounded like it was coming toward him. So he panicked and just kind of left his camera and with the film exposed and ran the hell out of there. And apparently he came back like 2-3 days later with a few people with weapons to retrieve his camera. And the very interesting picture resulting from that was a thumbnail picture. There's the cave. There's 3 objects that look like Bigfoot, and they have glowy eyes, and they're looking at the camera. So draw your own conclusions from that. But again, this is, you know, over 100 years ago, close to 150 years ago, that this guy did this. And there's the evidence of what it is that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, that just totally corroborates. I love that you found that picture. And that just points out, you know, we're doing research, and we have to reach back. You have to know the past. You got to look at people have been out here doing this and finding things. We're just trying to connect it to the modern science and things like these mapped car systems and that sort of thing. So, you know, this research has been done. People are out there finding these things. We're pulling them out of the archives and bringing them out to the people. So that's an important fact to know. I mean, that's just awesome to know somebody took a picture of eye glow and picture of Bigfoot and caves 100 years ago. Amazing.
Yeah, I had actually seen this picture floating around for like 15, 20 years now, and I always wondered what the backstory was on it and where it came from. And just a few days ago, somebody had put up a little article about the picture and what it was and where it came from. And I went, oh, my God, this is exactly what me and Rich are going to be talking about. Okay, I know what picture to use for this one now. But, I mean, you know, there's a perfect example. This guy knows nothing about Bigfoot, probably never did know anything about it, was in this cave system just randomly taking pictures and got a picture of these 3 Bigfoot-looking creatures staring at his camera. So, you know, how does that just like randomly pop into existence?
You're right. You're not the only person that does that. There's 2 or 3 other people that can work from a topographic map and go, this looks like a really likely spot right here. Let's go check this out. And 90% of the time, yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
And the tree structure thing, I was just down in northeast Utah last month doing some research with Kelly Shaw up in the Uinta Mountains. And I was the spotter. He was driving the vehicle, and I was looking out the window and spotting tree structures. And I spotted a structure complex that looks identical to something that I would see up here in Montana. Gigantic. I even remarked on it. It's like, oh, clearly these are Montana Bigfoot vacationing down here that built this, because it looks just like something I would find in my regular area.
Yeah, and that's one of the exciting things early on that I had done when I got into the tree structures is the exact same, the X's, the arches, these sorts of signs that they were leaving was clearly their communication, and they were marking. We haven't totally figured out everything they're saying, but we know that this communication is very consistent from no matter where you're at, and even talking to Dr. Burtsev, that's evident in also in Russia, in other countries. So, and you, Duke, have talked to people from all over. You just recently had the Alway show. That I'm sure validates much of your understanding of this too. That
they're finding the same things. She was showing pictures of arches that she had found, a whole cluster of arches, and she actually had the sense to stand there and turn around and film the area around it, which is all normal woodland. But there's this one cluster of weird arches. It's just inexplicable. Same thing they make here.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you know, I covered a lot of that. People can certainly go back and watch our video on that. But that was early on. The karst systems, the tree and stick structures were something I was working on. And then I got into I had the privilege of getting invited up to the Omaha reservation, and I started doing research with red squatching, and we really that's when things kind of took a more spiritual road for me. And since then I've really embraced having a Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I've absolutely have been a devout Christian since doing this, and I had some experiences in my own home where I had them visit me, and I was not totally prepared for that, to have the scratching under my bedroom window at 5 a.m., the slamming the side of my house, beating on the side of my house, banging on the power boxes in my backyard. I saw one that was literally crouched down next to my power box. It was a big black figure, and when it stepped, my little rat terrier I had at the time was went charged over there after it, and it stepped over the fence, and I could see the bottom of its pad of its foot. It's called an Ostman pad, and I literally saw that, and I was so freaked out and scared because it did not register with me that they would follow me home from the research I'd done maybe 5-6 miles from my home. An area that you and I had been in when you came up and did the documentary. They'd follow me home, and I was actually very careful when we did this documentary that I didn't go in the area where the clan that I had interactions with before. We were farther away than that location, so we didn't actually go to my original area. But when you were here, we did see a lot of tree and stick structures. We actually saw some Bigfoot in that area also. And this is I had these experiences, and they really shaped my opinion that I had kind of gotten into something that I wasn't really prepared to handle. And so I prayed, and I told them one was crawling in my yard. You could hear it was doing like a military crawl in the leaves in the back. First property, a big garden. I could hear that, and I went out and just finally told them, I won't come back to your woods, but you cannot come visit me. And I believed at that time there was 2 of them that were coming over the fence. There was a grapevine, and they were coming over that grapevine and was wearing it down in sections where they would come over. So at any rate, it was an eye-opening experience. And from then on, I stayed out of the woods locally, and I went up to the res with res squatching, and Barry and Dee had embraced me, and we continued the research that I had been doing and just really kind of up and ran with it. One of the early things that I was out with D there, and he had an area he wanted me to go check out. It was a sighting recently. There was a tree line, and I thought, I've got this. I know they're high and low frequency. They can hear really low frequency. I've got this dog whistle. Why don't I blow that dog whistle while we're out here and see what kind of reaction we get? Well, so I blew the whistle, and it was an absolute bluff charge from the minute I blew that from the tree line. D was startled. I was too, and we both were like, that's not what we didn't want to send that sort of message. So I've conveyed that before, but that was an experience. Like you don't want to make them mad at you and do stuff that's disrespectful to them. And so I learned from that. I don't recommend blowing dog whistles, but it did confirm they can hear. You do these kind of things, you learn something. They clearly can hear high and low frequencies, and they communicate that way. So sometimes, it's fun to experiment with this sort of things, but you don't want to get on their bad side either. So that was fun.
Yes, they can hear high frequency. They can hear a dog whistle. And you should also be careful about what kind of experimentation you're doing. Like when you're asked by your research partner to crawl up to the backside of this tree in the thicket, because it's going to be an experiment. We're going to see what happens. Well, what happens is the Bigfoot gets angry and throws a log at the tree, the other side of it that you're hiding behind, as Rich found out.
Yes, we had that happen, and then we had he threw some as we left. I had seen that. We pulled up. It was by a bean field on the Omaha Res, and we pulled up, and our headlights just before the tree line, one had been either crouched down or standing, and it turned. So we just saw I saw the turn of it, but it had red hair, and it had very long matted 8 inches maybe of matted hair. And so seeing that, then turn up into the timber, and then, okay, that's where we're going to go now. So we followed it up in there, and there was a huge tree structure that it had pushed 2 trees together. We're standing there interacting with it, and it became shook the entire tree, both the trees, which were huge. And we're like, oh, wow, well, that's something, that we couldn't, all of us together, the 4 of us would not be able to budge any of those trees. So as we went to leave, it literally threw dirt in the air, like threw dirt at us, like a handful of dirt. And I remember that dirt just being kind of flying in the air, right? And I'm like, what the hell is that? It's dark out. And that was get the hell out of here, you idiots.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is common because I've heard, I think it was in, what country was it, where they have it's like in Scandinavia, where they have up in these remote regions of the mountains there, they have little communities that have longstanding, they're essentially like hominids. They dress up in these furry suits and stuff and celebrate them, and they throw soot. Is one of the things they do is throw soot. So clearly a behavior that transcends against cross continents, and this.
I think that's Switzerland that you're thinking of, where they actually have the big furry costumes and they whip soot at each other.
Yep. I knew it was in Europe somewhere, and I have that on my European history or something on my website. Most of the stuff I'm talking about, you can go back and read in more detail of that also.
Just to digress on it quickly, all of the countries that are adjacent to there that have these alpine little villages and stuff all have this weird festival where they dress up in these furry costumes that look a lot like a Bigfoot. And it's not the Christmas devil. This is a completely different thing, and they all call it a different name, and the costumes are a little different, but all in this one region clustered in that mountain area, in all the adjoining little countries and stuff. They've all got the same kind of weird festival, so it makes you think that maybe there's something there behind that got the festival started. Absolutely. And that's another thing that we did an episode with Rich where we were talking about Bigfoot throughout Europe. And we have covered that many times. I've had Bigfoot in Europe, Robert Boston on here, and I've also had Tom Coburn recently doing research by his channel, Trails in the Woods, doing research in a different part of Germany than Robert was in, and several other guests from over there have been on. So there's a history Bigfoot over there in Europe, and most Americans never would think of that.
Yes, there absolutely is. And of course, in Europe, you have all of in the churches. And this was another thing that I had really helped me build my research is the Black Plague. I initially had done research about contagions, I believe, cold populations of the Bigfoot and Sasquatch and North America. And we saw that at the same time period about 500 years ago, during the time that Native American populations had dipped. And so I tied that research. I'm thinking that they had to have affected either their behavior or affect them physically and pull their numbers. We saw the same thing happen with the Black Plague in Europe. And prior to that, we had them on churches. They were there was the hunt for the woodwoos was a royal sport, and you had a great deal of history in Europe of these beings. Matter of fact, the Green Man and all of these things were on coins. There's a great deal of research that was kind of suppressed post plague. And it was either that these interactions no longer took place, or the numbers were cold, or they just members of the Europeans. Of course.
I don't know if we ever brought this up when we were doing the show on European Bigfoot, but you see a lot of those carving statues and stuff of a woodwoe as a Bigfoot-looking character, and usually he's got a big club. And these are all over the place in these cathedrals and stuff, these really ancient cathedrals. And if you look on the outside of the cathedral, it's protected by gargoyles. There's these scary demonic-looking things on the outside protecting it. But they'll actually have depictions of the woodwoes inside the edifice itself, which I found to be very interesting, because you don't put the depictions of the bad guys inside the church.
Absolutely. And an interesting connection with the Green Man, and of course, Prince Charles, when he became king, on his invitation, he prominently had the Green Man, the image of the Green Man. And the Green Man is this nature type figure similar to Bigfoot, but it may be one of the same, because when we start talking about spiritual or metaphysical existence, there are parallels there, and so there's really a fascinating, and even on the different types. Some of the famous, there was the fight in the forest. There was pencil drawings that were made during that time period that documented these interactions. The fight in the forest is a really good one, where you have these knights all strewn about, and a large Bigfoot type figure, a woodwoos, with a woven leaf hat wearing that, and he's holding onto a tree, and he's basically hit all these people, knocked them out. And it's pretty anatomically correct, because if you look at the size of the knights compared to him, it looks like he's probably like 9 feet, and they may be 5.5 or 6 feet tall. So
Granted, it's hard to tell how tall some of the knights are because they're strewn about the ground.
They are.
I want to catch everybody up on last fall. I was at the International Bigfoot Conference, and Igor Burtsev actually did a presentation there, and I was fortunate enough to get a chance to meet the guy and talk to him for a while. And wow, what a thrill that was. You know, this guy's like one of the top squatchers on the planet, if not the man himself. And then I found out afterwards that the week after that, he was over somehow mysteriously in Nebraska squatching with you. So how'd that come? How'd that come about, and how'd that all go?
Yeah, that was just an amazing experience. That was, you know, when you start down this road into squatching and getting out and doing research, you just don't know, you know, who you're going to encounter in the future. And I would have never suspected that I would have gotten to get out into the field with Dr. Burtsev, but that was truly an honor. He came here and kind of to do some research at the Omaha Reservation, where I do a lot of my research up there with Barry. And also I had made some connection with DNA research with the Zana that he had uncovered Quit's skull back in the early 70s. So it was kind of a mutual respect in what we were both working towards some DNA and working towards getting this mystery figured out from that level. But having him come to Nebraska was just an amazing experience. We drove. He came here to Lincoln, where I live, and then we drove up to the Omaha Reservation, which is about a little over 2 hours from where I live, on the Missouri River. And we had some interesting experiences while we were there. So I don't know if you want me to get into what occurred at the night, or what all you want me to talk about there, but I could share some of the things we experienced.
As far as I'm concerned, you can take an hour and walk us through it point by point, but I don't know if the audience would put up to that. So yeah, tell us at least about all the major cool things that happened. You know, I got to parenthetically mention that at this point, you are the only Bigfoot researcher I know that has been out in the field with both Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Dr. Igor Burtsev. So I think that's extra cool right there. But yeah, tell us this tale of Igor squatching with you.
Yeah, I feel very privileged and fortunate, especially, you know, living here in Nebraska. You wouldn't expect all of these people had to travel very far and had to want to come here to go out. So that was really cool. One of the first things when I was driving Igor, we were talking about, you know, I kind of asked him, you know, I was like, this is a great opportunity just to pick this man's mind. And I said, so how did you first get into this? And he was like, in 1961, he went on his first expedition with Jean-Marie Kaufman, who was one of the founding hominology members of the research field from Russia. She was a French scientist. And he told me this was September of last year when he came, and he said, you know, next month, October, will be her 99th birthday.
Oh, good Lord. Is she still squatching?
I don't know if she's squatching, but she's still alive and living in France. And she's.
So you just mentioned that Igor's first squatching trip was in '61. Now, that's the year I was born. And
Yeah.
he appears to be in better condition than I am. I'm kind of beat up at present. And he seems to be doing really damn good, honestly. So for, a guy his age, man, he's like in scary good shape.
Absolutely. He's 70. Well, he's 79 then. He's probably going to be 80 this year. So he, in, I believe, the late 50s, he was the Russian rowing champion. He had told me that also. So he was basically a world-class athlete to be a rowing champion in Russia. So not only, a PhD, but somebody who's just in really phenomenal physical shape.
That's a great combination for somebody that's going to get out in the field and actually go look for evidence, which is another thing I love about Igor, because he does get out in the field and look for evidence.
Oh, absolutely. He is. He's just contagious when you're out there with him because he's just so excited, and so it's a lot of fun. But I was going to tell you what he told me about that first expedition they went on, that they rode in the back of basically it was a tractor that hauled them up into like the Caucasus Mountains, and they had they were on a flatbed and they were hauled up into this area up in the mountains on the back of a flatbed of a tractor. So that's how they got transported. But once they got up in there, one of the first things they started looking at was horse braiding, and they had braids of that horses were getting braiding of the local leshy, which are or the Almasty, which are the wood dwellers, Russian snowman, they called them. And so, horse braiding, having hares and horse braiding, many people have associated that with the Sasquatch, Bigfoot here in the U.S. Well, he was looking at that back in the early 60s. So I thought that was very cool. And that is something we'll see in Nebraska, too. I don't know if you see a whole lot of that up there if you know people with horses, but that's kind of a common thing for them to be braiding. I don't know if it's the females who do that or why they would be braiding, but they're obviously...
Bigfoot Outlaw's got theories about that, and it has to do with horses being molested. And, I've had 2 or 3 guests on that have had this done to their horses, including one of them that owned a horse ranch. Fairly well convinced that that's actually what's going on. They're messing around with the horses. Bear will tell you the braiding thing is because they grab the horse's mane with one hand to control it, and they wrap their fingers around in the mane, and it after enough wraps, it makes it look like a braid. It stays braided looking.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that apparently has been going on for a long time because that was something that they had first started looking into. So I thought that was interesting. That was kind of just some of our talks as we were heading up to the Omaha Res. And then when we got there, we spent time with Barry, who does all of the res spotching, and he's a real good buddy of mine. I'm part of res spotching, and I go up there all the time with him. So we were able to get Dr. Bertseff out into the bush and do some research, and we looked at, one of the things people don't realize about him also is that the tree and stick structures is something that he's been doing for a long time. He showed me pictures of a researcher in Russia that was doing it, I think, even back in the 60s or 70s. But he started officially documenting it himself around 99 or 2000, I believe, is what he was telling me. So those still aren't getting enough attention in the mainstream science or mainstream, but most of us researchers who are out in the field really rely on that sort of thing and to understand how important these structures are and finding their habitat. So, and the one thing that I thought was cool that he was into, I thought, I wanted to show him some real big ones, but we stumbled across these really small, intricate ones that were just little, it's kind of a very interesting little breaks and stuff that were hanging. They're all kind of hanging, and they all looked the very same, but they were all kind of in a line, and they were hanging that way. So, it's very interesting. He took pictures of that, and then we went into to get back into the field, kind of talked about a little bit what the research we were doing there.
Did he mention anything about rock stacks? Did they pay any attention to that?
He did. He has done some research. He had a book actually at that time that that he had published that he was just bringing here. And what he wound up, he has some in that about rock stacking, but we didn't talk about too much about that while he was here. But he did have a very interesting amount of research of all that sort of thing. But
what we did during the day, we with Dr. Bertseff, we had kind of a meet and greet, and he told us some stories. And one of the stories he told us was about in Russia, there was a lady, and it wasn't too far from Moscow. I think it was within 50 miles of Moscow, that he had followed up with a report. And this is kind of what he does. You know, he lives in the city in Moscow, and him and Dmitry Vanoff, and they're in the Darwin Museum there. They have their office and work out of that for the international hominology. And so he had to, you know, when he gets information or leads, he leaves Moscow and goes out into the hinterland there of Russia. Well, he was going to check out this lady had a sighting. And she starts explaining it to him. She was in her garden. And this is what I thought was very intriguing. He said as she was gardening and she looks up and sees this large hairy creature standing there. And she became very concerned. And all of a sudden, it started to disappear kind of in segments. And it disappeared right in front of her down to its leg. And then its leg disappeared. And I was very kind of shocked that he would just be, you know, so open about these sort of stories. And really, matter of fact, that this is, you know, what she was saying.
We would consider to be extreme woo-woo here in the West, and would be mostly just ignored.
Yeah. And so here, you know, one of the preeminent researchers in the world just has no trouble talking about this sort of thing. So I thought, you know, wow, that's just amazing. I had not any inclination that this would be foreshadowing something that we would be having later that evening. And this is something, again, that it's kind of a quantum entanglement. I don't know how to explain it, but when you are in this research, it just seems like things kind of build on each other, and something that happened during the day or something that happened, you know, a few days before that might be foreshadowing something that's going to happen very soon. So
synchronicity.
So we went out to this area that we wanted to that was very active. We've had a lot of tree structures there, and it was pretty deep into the timber. It's what they call this the Los Hills there, which is right off of the Missouri River, and it's between like Omaha, Nebraska, and then up towards Sioux City or Sioux Falls, South Dakota is up that way, if people are familiar with that region. But the Missouri River just basically hugs the border of Iowa and Nebraska there. So we were in these Los Hills, which are really big bluffs, kind of deep bluffs and canyons that have natural springs, karst systems, caves, those sorts of things, which I've talked about before as excellent habitat for them. So we were in this area, and there was a lot of structures, and we just got there. And Barry likes to, he speaks the Omaha language, so he wanted to introduce Dr. Bertseff to the local Sasquatch there, or the Seatunga that they refer them to in the Omaha language. And so he is talking, and I decide, well, I'm going to do a wood knock and just see if we can get some activity, you know, to get some confirmation. And so I did 3 wood knocks, and the reason I did 3 is because I truly believe they keep an eye on you while you're in their woods, and they kind of know how many people are there, or at least if you're moving around, they're kind of knocking to inform other Seatunga or Hamids in the area that you're moving from one area to the next. So I did 3 knocks to kind of acknowledge that there's 3 of us here. So I did, 3 knocks, and sure enough, we get a return knock.
this. We were standing there talking. We were standing there talking, and all of a sudden, whoa. Yeah. And we were there, and all of a sudden, flew by us right there while we were talking. How was that? Yeah. You hear it, bro?
Yeah. I recorded it.
Good. Hey, this is sacred land, sacred area. Bro.
Did you guys hear the wood knock?
Yeah, I thought you threw over there.
Dr. Birdseth was right there. And he was like, yes, I heard it. His hearing's not as great, because he's almost 80 years old.
Yeah.
So, but he did hear the return wood knock. And so we told them at that time that this is Dr. Birdseth. He came all the way from Russia, a very long away from here. And, we respect him very much. He's an honored guest of ours. We want you to come and meet him. And we're going to be back tonight. And we expect you to come and greet us because we're here to see you. He's come here to see you. So, we really made an effort to communicate with them that, we're going to give you time to prepare for this, but we're going to be back here tonight and we're bringing Dr. Birdseth with us. And we would like for you to come and greet us. So we were kind of setting this up for something in the evening to happen. And when we came back that night. So, fast forward then, just to kind of tie all this story together, we did go back there then probably about 2 a.m. And on our way there, Barry was singing a song, and I can't remember the name of the song, but it has to do with the Setonga. It's in the Omaha language, and that we're happy to see you. We want to see you. Something just kind of repetitive. That and Dr. Birdseth was singing along with him. I have this recorded, but I haven't been able to edit in a while because my computer's been broke. So I have like a 6-hour recording of all this sort of stuff, but I need to break it down. But it's just awesome. You hear Dr. Birdseth singing this song with Barry, and it was a very happy kind of experience as we're driving along in my Jeep in the dark. And as soon as, we get closer to the area that we're going to be getting out again, where we had that wood knock return during the day, and I had we all had my windows down. We were in my Jeep, and I usually have my recorder running all the time because usually stuff happens just before you get out of your vehicle. Well, Barry started seeing we call this eye glow. Other people call it eye shine, but I truly believe it's actually some bioluminescence. But anyway, he started seeing some of that, so we stopped, and there was some kind of closer to the road, and we were trying to show that, but then they kind of faded back. So then we went on a little longer, and when we got to that location, we all got out. There was actually 4 other people with us that had came with us that night. And so there was 2 vehicles there. So we all kind of gathered around together. And when we go into, typically in these woods, we usually don't use any of our equipment. We turn all of our lights off and everything. At this particular time, though, Barry had a like $4,000 monocular that was the local police had, and they let us use it on to do a little scanning around while Dr. Birdseth was here. So we showed it to him, and he was pretty into it. It was a very small one, but it was very high powered. You could see about everything, and I kind of regret doing that because when we got out there, things started happening right away, and he was kind of scanning around with this little monocular. But the first thing that I noticed as we all get to this location, we all come, we come into this area that we were at, was it's like a blue type of light that kind of just filtrated through the timber. And it was probably about 100 yards from us. And I had never seen anything like this before. Now, I've heard many people talk about it, including first expedition I was ever on. They talked about orbs and stuff, and I was like, wow, I really have a hard time believing this. But until you experience this yourself, I could see people doubting it. So I totally can relate to that. But what people need to understand is that the duality of this hominid, of Sasquatch that we're studying, that there is a physical and a non-physical side to it. And we have to, if you're going to truly study this, you have to look at the whole thing. And that's something that I felt Dr. Birdsef is such a pioneer and so open to that. Just have so much respect for him for being that way. It really imprinted that onto me that, I just got to be open-minded and move with and go with it. So I'm watching this blue light kind of filter through. It's almost kind of like a little fog coming through, but it's a blue color, and it's filtering about 100 yards away. It filters past us, and I'm like, Barry, do you see that? And he's like, yep, I saw it. And he told me later that he believed that is when things start to cloak. And he said that actually there may have been many of them there with that amount of blue light filtering through there was probably quite a few of them that were there. So a little while later, we are standing there, and Barry introduces Dr. Birdsef, and he's there with him, and we basically, Barry asked them to come forward. He's speaking in the Omaha language, that we're here and we want a sign from you, but we also want you to come forward. We want to see you. We want to meet you. And at that time it is very dark there. It's absolutely dark. We don't have any lights on. We had all of our equipment turned off by then. And Barry starts saying, "Do you guys see this? There's something here. There's a couple of them right here." And I'm standing next to Barry, and he starts telling me that one of them's trying to reach out to him, and he's kind of sucking like he's sucking his stomach, and like he's kind of like concerned. And so I put my hand on his shoulder. I said, "It's I'm here. It's all right." I was like, I can't see anything. And he put his hand up in the air, and as high as he could reach, and he said, "You got to look up." And so all of a sudden I look up, and that's when this outline, and the only thing I could say, Duke, that I had any reference to was the Predator movie. I know it sounds corny, but in that Predator movie, when they are translucent, imagine something being completely dark, but with a translucent form there in front of you. And it was about probably 9 feet tall. The actual what I was seeing was just kind of an outline of what would be probably his head and shoulders. And so it wasn't like you could just see this round head. It must have been the hair and stuff, because it was just this big, huge figure in front of me. And when you're looking up, now I'm only within probably 3 feet of this in front of me. And so I literally have to look straight up to see it. When you're in that situation and you see this, your mind, at least in my mind, is questioning, is this my glasses? Is there something on my glasses? What is this? And we're standing there. Another member that's with us starts getting very concerned. LV, he thinks something with his legs. His legs are going numb. So we all kind of talk to him. We believe there was at least 2 of them there. And then back behind us was Dr. Birdsef had been out front, but for some reason he walked back behind us to rest. It'd been a long day, to rest on the bumper. And between him and us at that time, someone said a large dark figure walked between us there. So we were there for maybe 20, 30 minutes, maybe up to 40 minutes. It could have been. It's hard to tell. But that whole time we had this interaction, and it was just surreal to me. Again, I was really struggling to see if this was actually, what I'd experienced, if there wasn't something on the lens of my glasses. But I can tell you there was nothing on my lens. I later looked, and what I had seen was this cloaking sea tonga. And it was just surreal knowing that earlier in the day, Dr. Burtsev talked about that. So we wound up going to another area after that, and it just was mind blowing to me. So I'm fully engaged and did research on that and how it could be possible for something to cloak. And I have to say from my own experience, this is something they do. I know other researchers have had that experience, and now I can say just within like 2 or 3 feet of me, I had a very large, maybe 9 foot tall one. So that was quite an experience, and something I'll never forget. And the fact that it happened with Dr. Burtsev being there was just amazing. And
just to back you up on that, I mean, not only do I hear reports of that sort of thing happening, but we're starting to actually get visual evidence for it too. As I was telling you before we started recording, I got a picture where there's a pretty obvious distortion in it. And if you look closely at the distortion, draw an outline around it, and you can even see where the eyes and the mouth are on it. Everything else around it's in focus. And there's this one area, and it's not far from the camera. Everything in front of it and behind it's in focus, but that area is a blur. And yeah, I mean, to me, that looks like a really good example of a cloaking Bigfoot. And I got another one I'd like to use, but I'd need to get permission from the person that actually filmed it. I had somebody who's a listener to my show here yesterday who was in town visiting, took him out squatching and whatnot, and he showed me a screen capture he got from somebody else's video where you've got the camera in the same position for several frames of the film, and a Bigfoot just fades in. I mean, there's like nothing there at the beginning of the first frame, and by the end, last frame, there's a Bigfoot standing there, and the camera didn't move, and it didn't move into position. It just faded in. So really weird stuff going on there.
Well, and if I could speak a little bit to what I think the scientific side of that is, just to try to explain, to put, it gets thrown in the woo category, but I really think there are some scientific merit to that. One of the things that we know that Sasquatch will use is they will either break or crush rocks, and that's common for them to breaking and crushing rocks. But if you start looking at minerals or what monatomic elements or quartz, and one thing that a monatomic elements would have, like gold or silver, is if you have they're 99.9% pure, but there's like that 0.% that is not gold. That's the monatomic element that's in it. Well, these monatomic elements have very peculiar traits to them. You can basically they have the ability to basically be like interdimensional type features to them. They have, if they're pulverized or crushed, which I think that's probably, if they're ingest, maybe they play a part of that within these hominids ingesting them. If they pulverize or eat quartz, this may create some biological effect within them by using these elements, these monatomic elements. The other thing that can be used to affect this at an interdimensional level is the ley lines. And one of the things that I've noticed, I've started looking at these magnetic ley lines. And if you look at the ley line from where I live in Lincoln to where the Omaha res, there's a ley line that goes right through there. I'd be curious to take a peek. I do have a map of the magnetic ley lines. I bet you have some going through somewhere near your area also.
Yeah, if there's a map of that, send it on over. We've been trying to figure out where there is one so that we can take a look at it.
Yeah, I have a map. I'll send it to you and you can post it. It's a national...
We got megaliths around here. I'd like to see how many of those are sitting on ley lines.
Yeah. So here's what I think is going on, and actually this
this Russian researcher from the 50s or 60s, Damdin was his name. He had a picture of a Leshy, or a Russian snowman, and he had his knees underneath of him, his head to the ground, and his feet were on the ground, and they said that's how they were sleeping. Well, from what I've gathered, this is possibly a way for them to, if they were on one of these magnetic ley lines and they were ingesting these sorts of monatomic elements, this could be a way for them to get some sort of bioelectric or bio energy this way that could change their frequency. Now, it's a bit of a stretch, but when you look at the boson Higgs particle, and there is the Higgs field that where all matter exists in. And so if you can change your frequency and come interdimensionally in and out of something by using these monatomic elements, which we know they have the ability to create these things, and then using electromagnetic energy to generate that within your body, all the science is there to say this is possible. Are they doing it, and how they're doing it, we completely don't know. But I do think the science, the basic science to us is there, and I think it would have to do with these electromagnetic ley lines with monatomic elements that they could crush and eat. You know, if you have quartz, that many times there's gold in their quartz, and even quartz would probably suffice in that. To opening portals and those sorts of things. So start talking about the interdimensional thing, cloaking, all of these woo kind of things that are attached to it.
Let me back you up on this for a second before you go on.
Yeah.
The quartz thing, just about every hotspot that I find out here where there's consistent Bigfoot activity, there's quartz. It's either lying on the ground, there's huge quartz deposits, it's all over the place.
Perfect. And where there's quartz, there tends to be gold also.
Exactly. And that's why probably a lot of abandoned gold mines that have rumors that, haunted by Bigfoot, and Bigfoot's protecting the old miners' gold, they aren't interested in the gold all that much. They want the quartz. Quartz tuners, in an old-fashioned radio, the dial is quartz. That's how you're changing the frequency. So this is exactly the same thing that we're talking about. Another thing, both bear and cat have seen Bigfoot lying down in that position with their foreheads on the ground.
Yeah.
And cat, for her part, claims that what they're doing is they're recharging. They get on a ley line and they put their forehead on it for about 15 minutes, and it recharges the energy in them. And then apparently if they've ingested the quartz or whatever, they can use that energy plus the quartz to pull off their little maneuver and cloak or fade away for a period of time. They can't do it forever. But
it's like a bio.
For a little while.
Bioelectric biology thing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And then when they run out of energy, they go back to, again, like the ley line or whatever, and put forehead down on it, soak up some more energy, and then they're charged to do a little trick again if they need to.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening. And I'll send you a picture. I might have already done it, but you can post it when what we're talking about. And there was this Damdin, it was his name, it was a researcher, and he had a drawing. It was a drawing of them doing this exact thing, laying down like that way. So they're doing that in Russia. They were doing that, 50, 60 years ago. And so I have no doubt they're still doing it. And that's kind of this, the secret to this, that there is some biological, there's some scientific evidence that this is possible. So I don't think, you can totally throw this and say, it's woo, and that I think you have to accept that this is a part of the duality of their existence, that they have these non-physical things that they can do that most scientists don't want to address. But
right.
We're here, and I think you've got to talk about it. You've got to, because anybody that's going to be doing this research is going to experience it someday. Now, I know there'll be people listening to us today that does not believe this. But I will tell you, someday in the future, if you keep doing this, you're going to say, "Oh, Duke and Rich were right. I'll be damned if I didn't see something that was strange out there." Yeah. And it's something that's inevitable.
So
The other thing I wonder about, Rich, with their little cloaking trick, how much the weird construction of their hair has something to do with it, because hollow, transparent, it picks up the color of whatever it's next to. You wouldn't think, they wouldn't need a full-on cloak with an ability like that already. It wouldn't seem like it would take that much more to make them completely fade away.
absolutely. And there's a color that I think the government came up with called Fanta Black. And that color is used because it does you can literally, if you were to paint yourself all black and stand where it's being painted, you'd disappear. So certainly colors and our ability to see that doesn't make it very difficult for them to cloak around us. If they can do kind of a chameleon kind of like thing and simulate other colors that are near them. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. If they're going to stand out in the open and fade away, that's cloaking. But just for natural purposes and stuff, if they're sitting underneath a tree and most of them are black furred anyway, they look like a shadow. You're not going to see them. And to break up their outline, maybe they got their arm on the tree. So part of their arm is blending with the tree because the hair color is picking up the tree's trunk color. Part of them is sitting up in the canopy of the tree where the branches are, so it's looking a green color like that. So you're not even seeing their outline like you would see a human's outline. You're seeing pieces of it, and the pieces you were seeing just look like a black shadow.
Absolutely. So their ability to simulate and just kind of, we know that in nature you can walk right by a fawn in the bush. So
they're not blending or anything. It's just their camel pattern's so good and they're not moving. You don't even notice them.
Absolutely. So we're just, we are not the most inept people of seeing things and using our senses. We just don't have it. So it's not very hard to trick us in the wild, and I suspect they know that. Another thing is, it's interesting. Typically, they'll stay. They try to stay a good 70 yards away from you. If you're out in the woods and you have some trailing you or whatever, a lot of times they'll stay about 70 yards away. Well, if they're doing that, most cameras, I don't care what camera you're using, unless you've got a really good zoom, any kind of pictures you're going to be taking is just going to be blob squatch. It's just not going to be clear enough from that far away.
Yeah.
And they have the Patterson-Gimlin film was an 8mm, so that was really good. But most of the stuff that we have today, even though we think we've got great cameras and stuff, just take a picture of something from 100 yards away, and it's still not that. The pixelization is not that great unless you're using a really good camera.
And let me refer everybody to a show that I've connected to my playlist from Modern Explorer, Mateo Arguello over there in Colorado, who actually did a short subject on why the hell is it so hard to get a picture of Bigfoot. And he used his girlfriend as the example of Bigfoot and just let her run around and tried to get the camera to autofocus on her and stuff. And it was the usual, pathetic, you can't get a decent picture of anything
blob squatch
sort of
that's
situation. Exactly. And this is with a human, it's during the day. He knows she's there.
She's wanting you to take a picture and you're trying to, and you still can't get it right. Yeah. People need to understand that just the nature of them being far enough away and our cameras still are not capable of taking great photos that way. It's just not set up that way. So, it's, I know people get like, well, why can't anybody get a good picture? Well, if you're going to be criticizing people that way, you need to go out and try it yourself, because it's not easy at all.
Yeah. Get out there and then show us your good pictures, and then you can tell us all how we suck, but until then, shut up.
Definitely. So, as for Russia in the past centuries, there was people when they were interacting with the church regarded any relationship as a great sin. This attitude was reflected in a Belarusian folklore by an incantation, an enchantment, which is a kind of instruction to a young peasant, telling him what to do if he is accosted by a ruskalka, which is a female homid. And it is pointed out that the man should not look at her, but at the ground, and say the following: water dweller, wood denson, wild, unruly, and whimsical girl, go away, get away, don't show up at my homestead. I kiss the golden cross and abide by the Christian faith. so can't mix with you. Go to the pine forest, to the forest lord. He has prepared a bed of moss and grass and is waiting for you to mix, or is waiting for you there. So you are to sleep with him, not with a Christian like me. Amen. So that was like 1893 that was actually printed, but it was much longer ago that they were using this sort of thing, but they probably still was a part of that sort of, this was a Belarusian folklore incantation. So this would have been something the church would have been ordering people to do. You should not be interacting with them. And
it's interesting that the incantation is against being molested by a female Bigfoot.
Yeah, this is something a male a young boy would say to a female. Yeah, that's
here in North America, it seems to be just the opposite. I mean, that does come up, but usually it's the male Bigfoot picking up women and running off with them here.
Yes, and I think when that's definitely something that we've seen within the Native American culture, and quite possibly even to modern times, there could be people disappeared in those situations that have been ran off with, and we certainly don't know all these missing people, but there certainly some could still in those situations be that way. The DNA side of it, if you want me to get into some of that, or
yeah, you got any more Russian folklore? Is there anything else to share there? Because I'm fascinated by that. I mean, like we talk about like. So make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do not hug the Wookiee.